Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Times program where we talk to reporters and writers and editors and journalists, people who put stuff out in the Bronx so you can get an idea who they are and maybe what makes them tick a little bit. And this evening, we're going to do that in just a moment with one of the new reporters at the Bronx Times. In our second segment, we're going to talk to a teaching artist who has a whole thing going on at the Bronx Library Center. But for right now, let's say a good evening to Emily Swanson. She's a reporter at the Bronx Times, a recent graduate of the CUNY Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. Nice to see you, Emily. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for having me.
As I understand, and it does say on the website, you're from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
What brings you to the Bronx?
Yeah.
It's not like we're next door. It's not like you were in Jersey and then said, hey, I think I'll be in the Bronx.
Right. Yeah. Well, some weird part of me always wanted to move to New York.
Well, you don't have to sell me on that concept. I promise you.
Yeah. Yep. And I, somewhere along the way, I decided I wanted to go to journalism school and decided that the best place to do that would be in New York. I happened to apply to journalism school, had no journalism experience. I was actually a chef before and also a high school English teacher for a very long time. So it was sort of a weird and winding path, but now I'm here. I live in the Bronx. I'm reporting in the Bronx, and it's great. I love it.
We believe that it's somewhat undiscovered territory. And I always talk to a lot of reporters, and any reporter that comes here, they're like, wow, there's so much stuff here to talk about. What was it that made you say, instead of a high school teacher, and would you say you were a chef, what made you say, I want to be in journalism?
I think after my career as a chef lasted about 9 years. It was pretty lengthy, and I was a teacher for 11 years. And at that point, it was like I wanted to get back into something that seemed more public service oriented. And that's a really big part of how I see journalism is as a service to the public, as somebody who engages with the community. And I guess I finally became ready to do that.
Last question, and I love talking to people who come here to do journalism from elsewhere. What are your impressions of the Bronx? I understand you live in Port Morris, so that's the southernmost part of the Bronx. Many people are concerned of the gentrification down there, but just what's your own personal impression of what you've seen?
God, I instantly loved the Bronx. I started reporting there right my first semester of school, and it just seemed so great. It seemed like there weren't enough people doing stories here, that there was so much to be found. I found the people to be really amazing too. Almost everyone has been extremely receptive to somebody coming in from nowhere, knowing nothing. I've really found the Bronx to be exciting. Kind of untapped, kind of a hidden gem. The people are great. And
hey, listen, I want to get into some specifics about what you've written about. I love hearing that because it's what I believe. I've been doing this for 30 years. If it's hard to imagine, everybody has a story. And it's an interesting story that would make for a news story for you, for me, for anybody else. Anyway, let's really talk about this article because I think it's so important. And I don't know if people understand what the mayor's city of yes means. You found that there is mixed support for it. I was shocked from your article to find that a couple of community boards voted no for the concept, and a couple of Bronx community boards voted yes. So what do you think? Tell us what you learned about this mayor's idea of the city of yes.
Yeah, well, so City of Yes is really 3 sets of policies, and they're all big. They're all major things that New Yorkers will really feel and see. One set of policies is about housing. One is about carbon neutrality and environmental protection. And then the one that was mainly focused on in the article was economic development, specifically rezoning, which has not been updated in the city for a very long time.
That was really interesting to me, which you reported that they hadn't, the zoning changes had not happened since 1961, and you can do the math and figure out how many years it goes. And one of the things which you wrote about, current zoning allows live music in any bar or restaurant, but in some areas it doesn't allow you to dance to the music.
Mhm.
I mean, that's not a very Bronx thing, I have to tell you. Um, and so now the borough president has come out for it with some reservations. Maybe we ought to start there. What does Vanessa Gibson think?
Yeah, so the borough president is mostly supportive of this set of economic policies. She did put in some caveats, a little concern about like things like safety with like utilizing more upper floors of buildings and having like residential and commercial right next to each other. There were some kind of like warnings that she tossed in there, also about increasing the availability of in-home businesses, businesses that people are allowed to run out of their homes. She says, of course, some people could do that in a problematic way. It could go wrong in some cases, but in most cases, most people would be doing it with good intentions and in good faith. So yeah, she's mostly been supportive of this economic policy.
But people are concerned. What I've heard most recently, the Bronx Council for Environmental Quality expressed concern that if you open up residential areas and say you can have businesses everywhere, you could have somebody wanting to open a business that's out of context for what has been a residential neighborhood, as much as we all, including the borough president, wants to support economic development, right? I mean, so this is the balance of the two.
Right. Of course, it's all going to come down to how is it done, and how are we going to kind of safeguard the things that are going to be allowed if this policy goes through. It could be some big changes, and so with that, you'll have to. The borough president pointed out in her recommendation that like with these kind of big changes, you also have to have increased enforcement. You have to be able to hold people accountable for doing things responsibly.
So there is a hearing now. By the time this airs, the hearing will be done. It's on January 24th, as I understand.
Mhm.
We're actually shooting this before the hearing. I will tell you this from a personal point of view. There is a plot of land that's being sold to a foreign developer, and it's getting larger. And the plot of land of availability, and there's great concern that the city of Yes is kind of a note to developers: have it your way. We'll change the zoning if you need it. We won't require you to include parking in what you develop, which of course, frankly, in my neighborhood, which is the neighborhood you're seeing back there, that would be quite problematic.
Mhm.
So again, that's the balance. We need housing, we need economic development, but it's got to be done right.
Yep. That's a big concern. And this it's a pretty yeah, it could be some pretty big changes.
And so what gets by the way, every time I do that, that's what the technology puts a thumbs up there. What gets me is, to me, you need a community plan, regardless of this building or that building or any building. You need to really look at the community. And I think the concern is the city of Yes accepts everything. People in the East Bronx are going to be concerned because it's going to allow people to open up their backyards to create housing and stuff like that. You're really stuffing a lot of people in neighborhoods. What's your sense in the city council? Do you have a sense yet about what the city council members now? Of course, that's going to include all over the city, and we're talking about the Bronx. But do you have a sense about that?
I honestly, I don't really yet. I think like at this point, what I've mainly been following is like the community boards starting to weigh in, and perhaps differing amongst themselves and differing from the borough president at times. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where I've been focusing at this point.
Is to see how council members, their point of view on it. Of course, again, even if you get unanimity of Bronx council members, there's still Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, and Staten Island, which will tell the story in the long run. I want to ask you about another story that you did and a little while back, and that was about the Allerton street vendors. This was fascinating to me. We have a lot of places. Most immediate comes to mind along the Kingsbridge Armory, where there are numerous street vendors who come out there routinely or every day and sell stuff. What's going on Allerton Avenue that makes it so difficult, I think, for everybody?
Oh, it's a hot mess. It's a busy area with so much foot traffic and traffic from right by the train. And there's a lot of vendors there. Some of them have been around for decades in the neighborhood. And it's pretty much is becoming clear that they're going to keep doing what they're doing, even though sanitation comes by and like busts them all the time. These vendors keep setting back up. They even a lot of them even keep like backup merchandise like right there waiting
in case stuff gets confiscated.
They just are not going anywhere, and the system itself is so confusing and just a jumbled mess.
So I'm going to give you both sides. Number one, at least according to what you reported, vendors are having a problem getting licensed, or there's something gets screwed up with a license somewhere so that they don't have the paperwork on site if they get challenged or whatever. And then on the other side, the level of enforcement, even if they do, as you said, confiscate the goods, they're going to be back tomorrow. And listen, we don't want to start locking people up who are, especially we have many migrants. I mean, we know what the story is with many people just need to do this. What is the play out for this? It's really to straighten up the system, I guess. The Department of Services, is that who does it?
Well, the Department
DSNY
and Worker Protection issues the licenses, but DSNY does enforcement. And so, like, depending on whether it's general vending or food vending, there can be as many as like 6 or 7 different agencies involved. And it's very confusing and very restricted. And that's why I was surprised to find that even somebody who is a disabled veteran was having trouble with this situation, because that group is supposed to be kind of the easiest in.
We want to protect those folks. Listen, right. Emily Swanson, your first appearance here on the Bronx Buzz. We are thrilled to have you. We're thrilled to have you reporting in the borough of the Bronx. You certainly seem like you are just the right person because you care about our communities. You from the outside, you're saying, "Wait a minute, what is going on here?" And that's what we need.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really nice.
It's really a joy to have you, and I can guarantee you keep writing, we'll have you back too.
Great, I'd love to.
So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to go to an artist who's going to be showing at the Bronx Library Center. Don't go away.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, we love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
STEM is everywhere. Like here,
behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that can be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker horde.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at SheCanSTEM.com.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm excited because this is something interesting. It's unique, and it's coming to the Bronx Library Center. And so let's right away say good evening to Manny Knight. Nice to see you, Manny.
Nice to see you too, Gary. I'm so happy to be here.
Manny is, and forgive me to people in the Bronx for saying he's a Brooklyn-based illustrator, but we don't mind. He's a comic artist and a teaching artist, but he has Magna Ax, a creative odyssey, which is an exhibit unveiling at the Bronx Library Center. Tell me, what is Magna Ax?
Yes. Well, first, I want to say thank you so much to the awesome borough of the Bronx for adopting me for this exhibition.
Absolutely. You're one of us, as far as, certainly if you're on the Bronx Buzz, you got to be one of us.
I'm very happy to hear that. So Magna Ax, a creative odyssey, is basically a exhibition that features introduction to me, Manny Knight, as a mangaka, which is Japanese for comic book artist, and my comic series, Magna Ax. I've been working on this series ever since I was 8 years old, and it's been with me through good times and bad times and triumphant times and times of tears. It's grown with me, and I'm very excited to show off my creative process, as well as a comic memoir that tells you the origin stories of how I got into comics as a kid in anime and manga, and it follows my journey all the way up to where I am now currently.
It's kind of amazing that you have done it all this time. What inspired you to get started in that way and say, okay, well, I'm 8 years old and and now I'm doing this, but then continue it all the way into your adult life?
Oh, wow. Community.
My job to ask the tough questions.
These are really awesome questions. Community, and just, I was always a child with a sense of wonder. I would annoy my mom with coming up with like a billion stories all the time, and I would write them down in books. I would draw stick figures and squiggly figures and give them personas and names. And around that time on public television, anime started just popping up along with regular cartoons. I didn't think too much of it, but I was attracted to the colors, the characters, and the storytelling. And I knew that there was something there. I just didn't know what. And I just remember being very young, around 8, and being like, yeah, I want to do that, whatever that is.
And where were you? Were you in Brooklyn at the time?
I was in Brooklyn at the time, yeah.
Brooklyn at the time. So you went, and this is just out of curiosity, you went to a public school. Did the public school support this effort, or was this something, well, I did school like everybody else, and then I got this secret that I'm working on at home?
It was kind of like a secret that I was working on at home.
I had a sense
one
about
place
that.
If there's one place that I lived just as much as home, was the New York Public Library system. I just grew up in the libraries, borrowing all kinds of books, how to draw comic books, getting on the computer with my little library card and researching all the anime characters, trying to find interviews, things an 8-year-old shouldn't be doing. They should just be playing, they should be playing catch and stuff. And I would borrow books so much that my librarians would pull them to the side and give them to me for free, because I just borrowed them way too much.
Wow.
And I spent my time studying and actually using the VHS tapes. I would pause.
Remember those? Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would go to like the local 99-cent stores and buy bulk VHS tapes, and I would record the anime shows, and I would pause them on recording and study them intently. How do they do the emotions? How did they convey light, shadow, and stuff like that? And I taught myself through those two means all the way up until like college, where I'd finally taken my first art class.
What? Just out of curiosity, what college?
Kingsborough Community College.
Kingsborough Community College. Well, good for them. I also want to understand this notion of mangaka.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Mangaka, which means comic book writer in Japanese. Why Japanese? Why not just call yourself I'm a comic book writer here in English?
I thought about that a lot, and I think representation matters in the sense that a lot of kids now are having exposure to anime and manga and television, and it's something that I didn't really think about too much as a kid. It just sounded very cool, and as I did more research about it and learned all the ways that manga differs than comic books in terms of how they tell certain story arcs, I was like, yeah, I think that this is the appropriate title for me. It took me a long time to like fit into those boots, though.
It's a fascinating story because it doesn't, mimic any other path that you would think. And I mean, other comic book writers, etc., grow up, kind of go to art school, or they tell stories, or they, but you really kind of did it by yourself and developed this. It's frankly an extraordinary story. I want to show some of the artwork that you sent us that we can show to people. So if Anderson can play the magic box, we can take a look, and then you can tell us. So what is this that we're looking at?
So you're looking at the first cover of Magna Ax. That's a revision chapter because after I'd spent time doing the first volume, which was about 245 pages, I took time to sit down, reread it, and fix up the art and add some story elements I felt was missing at the time. When I did this comic in particular, I did 245 pages on a cell phone because I didn't have a laptop at the time.
That is
and I just downloaded an app.
So what one of the things among the things you'll talk about at the Bronx Library Center is this process that got you there. The idea is to help kick off Black History Month at the library's Latino and Puerto Rican Cultural Center. And the idea is to kind of inspire people. If you've got a germ in you, let it flourish. This is how I flourished, right? That's what we're going to tell. All right.
Absolutely.
Let's show another image.
Yes, so that's an in-comic page of the heroine Hanasa Nadena, and she's currently singing a hymn, which is her superpower. She has magical hymns that create all kinds of mystical and magical phenomena as she helps out in a fight against a monster. The symbols that you actually see on the page is a fantasy language that I created as a kid as well.
I was going to ask if it's Japanese, but it didn't look like what I know to be Japanese letters.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely in love with like fantasy worlds and things like that. I watched a lot of Lord of the Rings. I've read a lot of fantasy books, and I always wanted to make my own fantasy language. And that played a big part in making the comic series as well.
Okay, let's take a look at one more, and then I'll ask you a couple other annoying questions.
Yes. This is a action panel from chapter 3. That's the main character, Satoshi Inamada, and he's using an attack, and it's pretty much laying out what it is. So the art of Dragon Fang, and it basically explains to you almost like it's a video game. There's a lot of cheeky video game references to there's a lot of cheeky video game references in Magna Ax, as I grew up playing a lot of video games as well as watching anime and manga. So it's kind of like a love letter and homage to everything that kind of put me on the path. I'm kind of just putting it back into the universe.
This is quite a story, mostly because it's so individual. I mean, it doesn't parallel anything I recall. So let's just describe. So you're going to be speaking and showing off some of the artwork at the Bronx Library Center?
That's right. I'll be speaking about my journey, a creative odyssey. This exhibition is actually based off of a presentation that I do when I go talk at schools, libraries, and art conventions. I talk about my journey from start all the way to where I am. And I usually have a slide, but this time around, I wanted to make something very intimate as well as introductory to me. And I wanted to kind of bear it all and be vulnerable and show that it's possible to do things like this. If you really want it and if you put your mind to it, it's absolutely achievable.
And self-disciplined, I'm sure, goes along with that. So that opening date, just to let people know, jot it down, is Friday, February 2nd.
That's right.
Is that the date? At 5 to 6 p.m. at the Bronx Library Center, of course, on East Kingsbridge Road,
Yes.
here in the borough of the Bronx. So you won't, and now the thing is going to run all the way into the end of March 29th. But you won't be there all the other days, right? So people will be able to see the illustration and still be inspired. So now that you've gotten, this is the worst question of all. So now that you've gotten to this point where you've built this up since the age of 8, now you teach in schools, you do all these kinds of things. What's next? Like what do you do for an encore? Do you then continue the stories that you've been writing, or are you going to say, okay, I've done all this, now I got to do something, start somewhere else? I mean, how does your mind see this, or do you not see anything and you'll just wake up tomorrow and figure it out?
A lot of it was waking up tomorrow and figuring it out as I go, as I continue to hit one big moment after the next. I'd be like, wow, what do I do now? Or when I finished the first volume of Magna Ax, I was like, wow, now what? Well, volume 2. And I'm currently working on volume 2 right now. Yeah, I think that ultimately the next steps, the encore, is to continue the journey. As you know, Odysseus was on a very long odyssey, and so am I. I have quite the story to tell with Magna Ax. I plan on having at least maybe 7-8 volumes of this.
Wow.
And
who are the people who absorb it? I mean, the way it looks to me, especially with young people who are interested in these kinds of fantastical things and all those kinds of things, that's who I'm, kids who like video games. Oops, I dropped something. I'm sorry. Kids who like video games and things like that. Is that who the audience is, or do I have that wrong?
I think you're absolutely right on the money. I wanted to give back to what inspired me, and my biggest goal now is if I can inspire at least one person to be excited to pursue something that they want to pursue, I think that I have achieved what child me wanted.
Wow. It's a fascinating story. You hear how people get into all different kinds of artwork. And your style of artwork is quite distinctive and quite detailed. You work in pencil and pen? What do you
I work both traditionally and digitally. So
and digitally, of course. I'm an old guy. That's the way I think. I'm sorry. Maybe.
No, I do both. A lot of when I was learning how to draw was primarily in sketchbooks and pieces of paper and copy paper that I would just get from the 99-cent store on a clipboard.
Beautiful. Listen, let's get everybody out there for the opening reception. If you can't make it, get out to the Bronx Library Center. The opening again is 5 o'clock on Friday the 2nd, the Bronx Library Center. Congratulations, Manny Knight. You're getting somewhere. Finally. Finally, you're really doing something important, inspiring our kids. Is a real important thing. So we appreciate your time in the Bronx Buzz, and good luck on February 2nd all the way through March 29th. At the Bronx Library Center. That will do it, ladies and gentlemen, for the Bronx Buzz. We thank Emily for joining us. We thank Manny for joining us. This is the beauty of the Bronx. So if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, we will be back next week. Good night.